In the KJV Book of Revelation, please list the passages which deal with the woman. In the King James Version, KJV, of the Book of Revelation, the passages that deal with the woman primarily refer to the symbol of a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head, often interpreted as representing the Church or Israel. Here are the key passages. Revelation 12:1-6. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God, and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Revelation 12:13-17. And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. These passages in Revelation depict a symbolic narrative involving the woman, the dragon, often interpreted as Satan, and her child. The woman represents various interpretations, including the Church, Israel, or Mary, the mother of Jesus, depending on different theological perspectives. Alright, to begin, I would like to explore the appearance of the woman, to search if this symbolism has meaning. Are there other instances in the KJV Bible where someone is clothed with the sun? What does it mean to be clothed with the sun? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, there is another instance where someone is described as being clothed with the sun. This occurs in the Book of Song of Solomon, also known as the Song of Songs, which is a poetic book often interpreted as an allegory of the love between God and his people or between Christ and the Church. Here's the passage. Song of Solomon 6:10, KJV. Who is she that looked forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners? In this verse, the bride, often interpreted as representing the Church or the redeemed, is described as being clear as the sun, along with other celestial imagery. The metaphorical language suggests purity, radiance, and beauty. The phrase clothed with the sun in Revelation 12:1 is highly symbolic and has been interpreted in various ways throughout Christian theology. In Revelation, the woman clothed with the sun is often understood to represent the Church, Israel, or Mary, the mother of Jesus. Being clothed with the sun in this context symbolizes glory, majesty, and divine protection. It portrays the exalted and favored status of the woman in the vision, emphasizing her importance and divine connection. I looked up Song of Solomon chapter 6. While it might say something interesting that escapes me, it is very poetic and doesn't add much insight as to who the woman is or what she represents. It talks about her as a Shulamite. In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, the term Shulamite appears in the Song of Solomon, which is also known as the Song of Songs. The Shulamite is the female protagonist in this poetic book, and she is often understood to be the bride or beloved of King Solomon. The term Shulamite likely refers to her being from Shulam or Shunem, a place mentioned in the Old Testament. The name Shulamite comes from the Hebrew word Shulamit, which is derived from Shulam or Shunem, suggesting her origin or association with that place. The Shulamites' love story with Solomon is the central theme of the Song of Solomon, and it is often interpreted allegorically as symbolizing the relationship between God and his people or between Christ and the Church. Throughout the Song of Solomon, the Shulamite expresses her deep love and longing for her beloved, and the book is filled with rich imagery and metaphors portraying their romantic relationship. The woman in the Song of Solomon chapter has her beauty compared to Tirzah. In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, Tirzah is mentioned in the Old Testament, particularly in the book of Joshua and the Song of Solomon. Joshua 12:24, KJV. The king of Tirzah, 1, all the kings 30 and 1. This verse is part of a list of defeated kings in the time of Joshua, indicating that there was a king of Tirzah at that time. However, the specific context of Tirzah in this verse doesn't provide much detail about the city itself. Song of Solomon 6:4, KJV. Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. Here, Tirzah is used metaphorically to describe the beauty of the beloved in the eyes of the lover in the Song of Solomon. It's employed as a symbol of beauty and attractiveness. Tirzah was also a city in ancient Israel. It served as the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel for a brief period during the reign of Jeroboam son of Nebat, before Omri established Samaria as the new capital, 1 Kings 14:17, 1 Kings 15:21-22. Is there cross-reference in the KJV Bible where someone has the moon under their feet? I have shortened the provided answer. It is as follows. While there may be other passages in the Bible with similar celestial imagery, such as the sun, moon, and stars, the specific combination of having the moon under one's feet is unique to Revelation 12:1 in the KJV. The woman in Revelation is described as having a crown of 12 stars. Are there cross-references in the KJV Bible where someone has a crown of 12 stars? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, the imagery of a crown of 12 stars, like the one described in Revelation 12:1, doesn't have direct cross-references where someone else is described as having exactly the same imagery. However, there are passages where stars, crowns, or the number 12 are mentioned separately. Here are a few examples. Genesis 37:9, KJV. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and, behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Although not exactly the same imagery, this passage from Genesis describes Joseph's dream where he sees the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. This could be interpreted as a precursor to the imagery of Revelation 12:1, where the woman has a crown of 12 stars. Revelation 3:11, KJV. Behold, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. While this verse doesn't directly relate to the imagery of a crown of 12 stars, it mentions the concept of a crown, which is a symbol of victory or authority. Revelation 21:14, KJV. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. This verse in Revelation refers to the New Jerusalem and its 12 foundations, each inscribed with the name of one of the 12 apostles. While not directly related to crowns of stars, it involves the number 12, which is significant in biblical symbolism. These passages provide some context for the themes of stars, crowns, and the number 12 in the Bible, but the specific imagery of a crown of 12 stars is primarily found in Revelation 12:1. In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, there are several references to a woman travailing in birth, both in literal and metaphorical contexts. Here are a few examples. Isaiah 26:17-18, KJV. Like as a woman with child, that draweth near the time of her delivery, is in pain, and crieth out in her pangs, so have we been in thy sight, O Lord. We have been with child, we have been in pain. We have as it were brought forth wind, we have not wrought any deliverance in the earth, neither have the inhabitants of the world fallen. This passage from Isaiah uses the imagery of a woman in labor to describe the pain and distress of the people of Israel. Jeremiah 4:31, KJV. For I have heard a voice as of a woman in travail, and the anguish as of her that bringeth forth her first child, the voice of the daughter of Zion, that bewaileth herself, that spreadeth her hands, saying, Woe is me now! For my soul is wearied because of murderers. Here, Jeremiah uses the metaphor of a woman in labor to describe the anguish and distress of the daughter of Zion. Micah 4:9-10, KJV. Now why dost thou cry out aloud? Is there no king in thee? Is thy counselor perished? For pangs have taken thee as a woman in travail. Be in pain, and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail, for now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field. And thou shalt go even to Babylon, there shalt thou be delivered, there the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. Similar to Jeremiah, Micah uses the imagery of a woman in labor to depict the pain and anguish of the daughter of Zion. These passages illustrate how the metaphor of a woman travailing in birth is used in the Old Testament to convey the idea of pain, anguish, and distress, often in the context of the suffering of God's people or the anticipation of redemption. In the KJV Bible, who is the daughter of Zion? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, the term daughter of Zion is used to refer to the people of Jerusalem or the city itself, often symbolizing the people of Israel or the Jewish nation as a whole. The term appears frequently throughout the Old Testament, particularly in the prophetic books and the Psalms. Here are a few examples. Isaiah 1:8, KJV. And the daughter of Zion is left as a cottage in a vineyard, as a lodge in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city. Here, the daughter of Zion symbolizes the city of Jerusalem, which is depicted as desolate and besieged. Lamentations 1:6, KJV. And from the daughter of Zion all her beauty is departed, her princes are become like harts that find no pasture, and they are gone without strength before the pursuer. This verse laments the downfall of Jerusalem and the loss of its former glory, using the term daughter of Zion to refer to the city. Micah 4:10, KJV. Be in pain, and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail, for now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field. And thou shalt go even to Babylon, there shalt thou be delivered, there the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. In this passage, the daughter of Zion represents the people of Jerusalem who are exhorted to endure suffering with the hope of eventual redemption. The term daughter of Zion is often used poetically and prophetically to evoke emotions of sorrow, hope, or anticipation, depending on the context. It signifies the identity and destiny of Jerusalem and its inhabitants within the biblical narrative. Who is the man-child referenced in the KJV Book of Revelation? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Book of Revelation, the man-child mentioned in Revelation 12:5 refers to Jesus Christ. Here is the passage. Revelation 12:5, KJV. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God, and to his throne. The imagery of the woman giving birth to a male child who will rule all nations with a rod of iron is a reference to messianic prophecy found in the Old Testament, particularly in Psalm 2:7-9. Psalm 2:7-9, KJV. I will declare the decree, the Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. In Christian interpretation, the man-child symbolizes Jesus Christ, who was born of the Virgin Mary and is destined to rule over all nations as the Messiah, the Son of God. The imagery of being caught up unto God and to his throne refers to Jesus' ascension to heaven after his resurrection and his exaltation to the right hand of God the Father. In the KJV Bible, what are cross-references to the rod of iron? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, the phrase rod of iron appears in several passages. Here are some cross-references. Psalm 2:9, KJV. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. This verse is a messianic prophecy, referring to the rule and authority of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, over the nations. Revelation 2:27, KJV. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. This verse is part of a message to the church in Thyatira, where Jesus promises authority to those who overcome, just as he received authority from his Father. It echoes the imagery of Psalm 2:9 regarding the rule of the Messiah. These cross-references demonstrate the connection between the rod of iron mentioned in Psalm 2:9 and its fulfillment in the rule of Jesus Christ, as depicted in the book of Revelation. This is my own commentary, but I would like to emphasize that a rod of iron seems to imply a kind of violent threat, as the rod is metaphorically compared to pots being smashed. So, this rod of iron is used violently, as indicated by its use for smashing pots. I would like to expand on the just mentioned on Revelation 2:27. Yes, it is on the topic of Thyatira here. However, going back a few verses, there is connection, rather cross-reference, that the rod of iron may be used for the ruling of nations. I shall quote at length Revelation 2 verse 25 to 29. 25 But that which ye have already hold fast till I come. 26 And he that overcometh, and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. 27 And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. 28 And I will give him the morning star. 29 He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Are there other KJV biblical references to being given power over the nations? Yes, there are other references in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible to being given power or authority over the nations. Here are a few examples. Revelation 2:26, KJV. And he that overcometh, and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. This verse is part of a message to the church in Thyatira, where Jesus promises authority to those who overcome and remain faithful to his teachings. Revelation 20:4, KJV. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads, or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. In this verse, John describes a vision of the saints reigning with Christ during the millennial kingdom, having been given authority to judge and rule. Luke 22:29-30, KJV. And I appoint unto you a kingdom, as my Father hath appointed unto me, that ye may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Here, Jesus tells his disciples that they will have authority and be appointed a kingdom, with the privilege of reigning and judging alongside him. These passages convey the idea that faithful believers will be granted authority or power over the nations, either through reigning with Christ in his kingdom or through judgment and rule in accordance with his teachings. Alright, now I am changing the subject slightly. What is the KJV Revelation quote where the woman flees to the wilderness? The quote you're referring to is from Revelation 12:6 in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. This verse is part of a symbolic vision in Revelation 12, where the woman, often interpreted as representing the church, Israel, or Mary, the mother of Jesus, flees into the wilderness to a place prepared by God for her protection. The wilderness symbolizes a period of trial or persecution, and the duration of 1,203 days is often interpreted symbolically as a period of time representing the duration of challenges or tribulations faced by God's people. In the above quote, who feeds her? In the quote from Revelation 12:6 in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, it is stated that the woman who flees into the wilderness is fed there by they, though it's not explicitly mentioned who they are in this verse. Here's the quote again for reference. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,203 days. Interpretations of who they refers to can vary among biblical scholars and theologians. Some interpretations suggest that they could symbolize angels or divine agents who provide for the woman during her time of refuge in the wilderness. Others see it as a general indication of divine provision without specifying the agents involved. Where is this wilderness that the woman flees to? In the book of Revelation, the wilderness to which the woman flees is not specified with geographical precision. Instead, it is often understood symbolically to represent a place of refuge and protection provided by God during times of persecution or tribulation. The wilderness can be interpreted metaphorically as a place of isolation, separation from the world, and reliance on God's provision. Interpretations of the wilderness vary among biblical scholars and theologians. Some see it as a literal place of physical refuge, while others view it as a metaphorical representation of the spiritual journey or a period of trial and testing endured by God's people. Regardless of the specific location, the emphasis is on the divine provision and protection afforded to the woman, often interpreted as the church, Israel, or Mary, during times of adversity. The wilderness serves as a symbol of God's faithfulness and care for his people in the midst of challenges and persecution. Are there cross-references in the KJV Bible to the wilderness in which the woman flees to? While there are no direct cross-references in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible to the specific wilderness mentioned in Revelation 12:6 where the woman flees, there are numerous references to the wilderness throughout both the Old and New Testaments. These references often symbolize various themes such as testing, purification, spiritual journey, or divine provision. Here are a few examples. Exodus 3:18, KJV. And they shall hearken to thy voice, and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, The Lord God of the Hebrews hath met with us, and now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. This verse describes Moses' encounter with God at the burning bush and his subsequent mission to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and into the wilderness on their journey to the Promised Land. Matthew 3:1-3, KJV. In those days came John the Baptist, preaching in the wilderness of Judea, and saying, Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. For this is he that was spoken of by the prophet Esaias, saying, The voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. This passage refers to John the Baptist preaching and baptizing in the wilderness of Judea, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah as the voice crying out in the wilderness to prepare the way for the Lord. Mark 1:12-13, KJV. And immediately the Spirit driveth him into the wilderness. And he was there in the wilderness 40 days, tempted of Satan, and was with the wild beasts, and the angels ministered unto him. This passage describes Jesus being led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan for 40 days. While these passages may not directly correspond to the specific wilderness mentioned in Revelation 12:6, they provide context for the symbolic significance of the wilderness throughout the Bible as a place of testing, preparation, and encounter with God. Are there KJV Bible references of Satan being in the wilderness? Yes, there are references in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible to Satan being in the wilderness. One notable example is found in the New Testament during the temptation of Jesus. Here are the relevant verses. Matthew 4:1-11, KJV. Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Then the devil taketh him up into the holy city, and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple, and saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Jesus said unto him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and sheweth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and, behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In this passage, Satan, referred to as the devil, tempts Jesus while he is in the wilderness for 40 days and nights. This account of Satan tempting Jesus in the wilderness is also found in Mark 1:12-13 and Luke 4:1-13 in the KJV. In the KJV Book of Revelation, is the red dragon in the wilderness. In the King James Version, KJV, of the Book of Revelation, the red dragon is not specifically mentioned as being in the wilderness. The red dragon is introduced in Revelation 12:3-4, where it is described as having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon its heads. Here's the relevant passage. Revelation 12:3-4, KJV. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. While the passage mentions the dragon standing before the woman who is ready to give birth, there is no direct indication that the dragon is in the wilderness. Instead, the focus is on the dragon's actions in the heavenly realm and its attempt to harm the woman and her child. The imagery of the wilderness is used elsewhere in Revelation to symbolize different themes, such as a place of refuge, testing, or spiritual journey, but it is not specifically associated with the red dragon in Revelation 12. Are there KJV Bible references where someone has wings of a great eagle? Yes, there are references in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible to individuals or beings having wings like those of a great eagle. One notable example is found in the Old Testament. Here are the relevant verses. Exodus 19:4, KJV. Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. In this verse, God speaks to the Israelites through Moses, reminding them of how he delivered them out of Egypt and brought them to himself on eagle's wings. This metaphorical imagery describes God's protection, guidance, and deliverance of his people. While this verse doesn't specifically mention someone having wings like those of a great eagle, it does use the imagery of God's protective care likened to the flight of an eagle. The specific phrase wings of a great eagle is not found in the KJV, but similar imagery and themes of divine protection and deliverance are present throughout the Bible. In the KJV Book of Revelation, what is the remnant of her seed? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Book of Revelation, the remnant of her seed is mentioned in Revelation 12:17. Here's the relevant verse. Revelation 12:17, KJV. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. In this verse, the woman is often interpreted symbolically as representing the church or the people of God, while the remnant of her seed refers to those who remain faithful to God despite the opposition and persecution from the dragon, commonly interpreted as Satan or the forces of evil. The remnant are described as those who keep the commandments of God and hold fast to their testimony of Jesus Christ. This verse highlights the ongoing spiritual conflict between good and evil, and it emphasizes the perseverance and faithfulness of the faithful remnant in the face of adversity. There seems to be some similarity between the woman in the KJV book of Revelation and the story of Moses. Could you please draw connections between the similar details of both stories? Certainly. There are indeed some parallels between the imagery and themes in the story of the woman in Revelation 12 and certain events in the life of Moses. Here are some connections. Fleeing into the wilderness. In Revelation 12:6, the woman flees into the wilderness to a place prepared by God, where she is protected from the dragon's persecution. Similarly, in the Old Testament, Moses fled into the wilderness of Midian to escape Pharaoh's wrath after killing an Egyptian, Exodus 2:15. Protection and nourishment in the wilderness. In Revelation 12:6, the woman is nourished and protected in the wilderness for a specified period of time. Moses was protected and sustained by God during his time in the wilderness of Midian, where he encountered the burning bush and received his divine commission to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Exodus 3. Deliverance from oppression. The woman in Revelation 12 represents God's people, who are persecuted by the dragon but ultimately delivered by divine intervention. Similarly, Moses was chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt, delivering them from the oppression of Pharaoh through miraculous signs and wonders. Conflict with a powerful adversary. The dragon in Revelation 12 represents Satan, who seeks to destroy the woman and her offspring. Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, can be seen as a type of adversary who oppressed the Israelites and resisted God's will. Rescue of a child. In Revelation 12:5, the woman gives birth to a male child who is destined to rule all nations. The child is caught up to God and his throne, symbolizing divine protection and exaltation. Moses, as an infant, was rescued from Pharaoh's decree of death by being placed in a basket and placed among the reeds of the Nile River. He was later raised in the palace of Pharaoh's daughter, ultimately fulfilling a significant role in the liberation of the Israelites. While these parallels are intriguing, it's important to note that the primary purpose of the imagery in Revelation 12 is to convey spiritual truths about the conflict between good and evil and the ultimate victory of God's kingdom, rather than to directly mirror the narrative of Moses. What is the story in the KJV book of Zechariah about the woman and the basket? The story you're referring to is found in the book of Zechariah, specifically in Zechariah 5:5-11 in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible. This passage describes a vision seen by the prophet Zechariah, involving a woman and a basket. Here's the relevant passage. Zechariah 5:5-11, KJV. Then the angel that talked with me went forth, and said unto me, Lift up now thine eyes, and see what is this that goeth forth. And I said, What is it? And he said, This is an ephah that goeth forth. He said moreover, This is their resemblance through all the earth. And, behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, This is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted I up mine eyes, and looked, and, behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then said I to the angel that talked with me, Whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, To build it an house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established, and set there upon her own base. In this vision, Zechariah sees an ephah, which is a large basket used for measuring grain or other commodities. Inside the ephah, there is a woman who represents wickedness. The angel casts a lead cover over the ephah, symbolizing the suppression of evil. Then, Zechariah sees two women with wings like storks, who lift up the ephah and carry it away to the land of Shinar. The land of Shinar is often associated with Babylon in the Bible, and in this context, it represents a place of judgment and exile for wickedness. This vision symbolizes the removal and judgment of wickedness from the land, with the ephah being taken away to a distant place where it will be established and dealt with accordingly. What is an ephah? An ephah was a unit of measurement in the ancient Near East. It was used to measure dry goods such as grain, flour, and other commodities. The exact volume of an ephah varied over time and from region to region, but it was generally equivalent to roughly 3 to 4 bushels or around 22 to 35 liters. In addition to being a unit of measurement, the term ephah also referred to a container or vessel used to hold the measured amount of goods. These containers were typically large baskets made from woven material, such as reeds or palm leaves. The ephah is mentioned numerous times in the Old Testament. Where is the land of Shinar cross-referenced in the KJV Bible? In the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, the land of Shinar is cross-referenced in several passages. Shinar is often associated with Babylon and is mentioned in the context of the ancient Mesopotamian region where the Tower of Babel was built. Here are some references. Genesis 10:10, KJV. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. This verse is part of the table of nations in Genesis, listing the descendants of Noah's sons and the nations they established. It mentions Babel, Babylon, as one of the cities founded in the land of Shinar. Genesis 11:1-2, KJV. And the whole earth was of one language, and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. This passage describes the setting for the construction of the Tower of Babel, where the people of the earth gathered on the plain in the land of Shinar and attempted to build a tower to reach the heavens. Daniel 1:2, KJV. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. This verse refers to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, taking captives and plunder from Jerusalem to the land of Shinar, where they were placed in the house of his God, likely a reference to a temple in Babylon. These passages provide context for the land of Shinar, which is associated with ancient Mesopotamia and particularly with the region where Babylon was located. Is Shinar Babylon? How are they related to each other? Yes, Shinar and Babylon are closely related in biblical and historical contexts. Shinar is a region mentioned in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, while Babylon was one of the prominent cities located within that region. In the Bible, Shinar is associated with the plain where the Tower of Babel was built, as described in Genesis 11:1-9. This plain is identified as being in the land of Shinar. Additionally, in Genesis 10:10, Shinar is mentioned in the context of the kingdom founded by Nimrod, which included the city of Babel, Babylon, among others. Babylon, on the other hand, was one of the most significant cities in ancient Mesopotamia and the capital of the Babylonian Empire. It was located in the southern part of Mesopotamia, in what is now modern-day Iraq. Babylon rose to prominence as a major political, cultural, and economic center in the ancient Near East, and it played a significant role in biblical history, particularly in relation to the captivity of the Israelites and the fall of Jerusalem. While Shinar and Babylon are distinct entities, they are closely associated with each other in biblical narratives, with Babylon being one of the prominent cities located within the region of Shinar. As such, they are often used interchangeably or mentioned together in biblical texts. What are some parallels between the story about the woman and basket in the KJV book of Zechariah and the KJV book of Revelation regarding the woman? While there are some similarities between the imagery in the book of Zechariah and the book of Revelation regarding a woman and a basket, it's important to note that the contexts and themes of these passages differ significantly. However, here are some parallels that can be drawn. Symbolism of a woman. In Zechariah, the woman is associated with wickedness and is depicted as sitting inside the basket, ephah. In Revelation, the woman is depicted as a symbol of God's people, often interpreted as the church or Israel, who are persecuted by the dragon, Satan, but ultimately protected and delivered by God. Imagery of wings. In Zechariah, two women with wings like storks lift up the ephah and carry it away to the land of Shinar. In Revelation, the woman is described as having wings of a great eagle, which are given to her to fly into the wilderness to a place prepared by God. Movement to a distant place. In Zechariah, the ephah containing the woman, representing wickedness, is taken away to the land of Shinar, often associated with Babylon. In Revelation, the woman flees into the wilderness to a place prepared by God, where she is protected from the dragon's persecution. Judgment and removal of wickedness. In both passages, there is a sense of judgment and removal of wickedness. In Zechariah, the woman inside the ephah is associated with wickedness and is taken away to a distant place. In Revelation, the woman represents God's people who are persecuted by the dragon, Satan, but they are ultimately protected and delivered by God. While these parallels exist in terms of imagery and symbolism, the overarching themes and messages of the passages differ. Zechariah's vision emphasizes the removal of wickedness, while Revelation focuses on the protection and deliverance of God's people amidst spiritual conflict and persecution. Are there cross-references in the KJV Bible to the woman in the KJV Book of Revelation? Yes, there are cross-references in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible to the woman described in the Book of Revelation. Here are some related passages that provide context or similar imagery. Genesis 37:9, KJV. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and, behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. This passage recounts Joseph's dream where the sun, the moon, and the stars bow down to him. In Revelation 12:1, the woman is described as having the sun, the moon, and 12 stars upon her head, which has led to interpretations linking her to the imagery in Joseph's dream. Isaiah 66:7-8, KJV. Before she travailed, she brought forth, before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. This passage from Isaiah uses the imagery of a woman in labor to describe the birth of a nation. Some interpret this as foreshadowing the imagery of the woman in Revelation 12 giving birth to a male child. Galatians 4:26, KJV. But Jerusalem which is above is free, which is the mother of us all. In this verse, Jerusalem is described metaphorically as a mother figure. Some interpretations connect this concept with the woman in Revelation 12, who is often interpreted as representing the church or the people of God. While these passages are not direct cross-references to the woman in Revelation, they contain imagery and themes that are related and have been interpreted in connection with the symbolism found in Revelation 12. Are there more references? Certainly. Here are additional cross-references in the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible that are related to the woman described in the book of Revelation. Isaiah 54:5, KJV. For thy Maker is thine husband, the Lord of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer the Holy One of Israel, the God of the whole earth shall he be called. This passage metaphorically describes the relationship between God and his people using the imagery of a husband and wife. Some interpretations connect this marital imagery with the relationship between Christ and the church, which is symbolized by the woman in Revelation 12. Isaiah 66:7-9, KJV. Before she travailed, she brought forth, before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth, and not cause to bring forth? Saith the Lord, shall I cause to bring forth, and shut the womb? Saith thy God. This passage from Isaiah uses the imagery of childbirth to symbolize the birth of a nation. Some interpretations connect this with the imagery of the woman in Revelation 12 giving birth to a male child. Jeremiah 6:2, KJV. I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. Here, the daughter of Zion is metaphorically likened to a beautiful and delicate woman. This verse emphasizes the imagery of Jerusalem as a feminine figure, which can be connected to the symbolism of the woman in Revelation 12. These additional references provide further context and imagery that are related to the woman described in the book of Revelation, enriching the understanding of her symbolic significance within the biblical narrative. Please take the story in the KJV book of Revelation about the woman, and create a short simple account, using short simple sentences. In the book of Revelation, there's a woman who appears in a vision. She's clothed with the sun, has the moon under her feet, and wears a crown of 12 stars. She's pregnant and cries out in pain, ready to give birth. Then, a great red dragon appears, ready to devour her child. The child is born, a male child who will rule all nations. The woman flees into the wilderness, where God has prepared a place of safety for her. The dragon tries to attack her there, but she is protected. The dragon is angry and goes to make war with the rest of her offspring, those who follow Jesus. But God watches over them and gives them strength. Are the seed of the woman referenced elsewhere in the book of Revelation? In the book of Revelation, the specific phrase seed of the woman is not directly referenced elsewhere. However, the concept of the woman's offspring or seed, representing the faithful followers of Jesus Christ, can be seen throughout the book. For example, in Revelation 12:17, KJV, it mentions the dragon going to make war with the remnant of her seed, which refers to the rest of the woman's offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. This passage highlights the ongoing spiritual conflict between the dragon, Satan, and the faithful followers of Jesus, who are symbolically depicted as the woman's seed. While the specific phrase seed of the woman may not be used elsewhere in Revelation, the theme of spiritual warfare and the victory of God's people over the forces of evil is a recurring motif throughout the book. Can the concept of a remnant of seed or a remnant people be found elsewhere in the KJV book of Revelation? Yes, the concept of a remnant of people or a faithful minority can be found elsewhere in the King James Version, KJV, of the book of Revelation. Here are a couple of examples. Revelation 3:4, KJV. Thou hast a few names even in Sardis which have not defiled their garments, and they shall walk with me in white, for they are worthy. In this verse, Jesus addresses the church in Sardis and acknowledges that there are a few names among them who have remained faithful and have not defiled their garments. These faithful individuals are promised to walk with Jesus in white, symbolizing purity and righteousness. Revelation 11:13, KJV. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the God of heaven. This verse describes an event in which a remnant of people, after witnessing a great earthquake and destruction, give glory to God. Though a significant portion of the city falls, there remains a remnant who acknowledge the power and sovereignty of God. These passages illustrate the concept of a faithful remnant within the context of the churches in Revelation and the events surrounding the end times. Despite challenges and trials, there are always those who remain faithful to God and His teachings. Excluding the book of Revelation, is there a concept of remnant people found elsewhere in the KJV Bible? Yes, the concept of a remnant people is found throughout the King James Version, KJV, of the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament. The idea of a remnant often refers to a faithful minority or a group of people who remain true to God's covenant and purposes, even in the midst of apostasy or judgment. Here are a few examples. Isaiah 10:20-22, KJV. And it shall come to pass in that day, that the remnant of Israel, and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob, shall no more again stay upon him that smote them, but shall stay upon the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. The remnant shall return, even the remnant of Jacob, unto the mighty God. For though thy people Israel be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return, the consumption decreed shall overflow with righteousness. This passage from Isaiah speaks of a remnant of Israel that will return to the Lord and trust in Him, even after experiencing judgment and exile. It emphasizes the faithfulness of a small group within the larger nation. Micah 5:7-8, KJV. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many people as a dew from the Lord, as the showers upon the grass, that tarrieth not for man, nor waiteth for the sons of men. And the remnant of Jacob shall be among the Gentiles in the midst of many people as a lion among the beasts of the forest, as a young lion among the flocks of sheep, who, if he go through, both treadeth down, and teareth in pieces, and none can deliver. Here, Micah describes the remnant of Jacob as a source of blessing and strength among the nations, empowered by the Lord to accomplish His purposes. Romans 9:27-29, KJV. Esaias also crieth concerning Israel, though the number of the children of Israel be as the sand of the sea, a remnant shall be saved, for He will finish the work, and cut it short in righteousness, because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. And as Esaias said before, except the Lord of Sabaoth had left us a seed, we had been as Sodom, and been made like unto Gomorrah. In this New Testament passage, Paul quotes from Isaiah to emphasize the idea that only a remnant of Israel will be saved through God's righteousness and mercy. These passages, along with others throughout the Old and New Testaments, highlight the concept of a faithful remnant within God's people who continue to uphold His covenant and receive His promises, even in times of trial and judgment. Please look at everything I have discussed so far. Is there anything I have neglected to ask regarding the woman in the KJV Book of Revelation and what it means and how it is interpreted? Based on our discussion so far, it seems you've covered various aspects related to the woman in the King James Version, KJV, of the Book of Revelation, including her symbolism, interpretations, related passages, and connections to other biblical themes. However, here are a few additional questions or topics you might consider exploring. Interpretations of the woman. Have you explored different interpretations of the woman in Revelation 12, such as those identifying her as the Church, Israel, Mary, or a combination of these? Symbolism of the woman's attributes. Have you delved deeper into the symbolism of the woman's clothing with the sun, the moon under her feet, and the crown of 12 stars? What do these symbols represent in various interpretations? Connection to Old Testament prophecies. Have you examined how the imagery of the woman in Revelation 12 is connected to Old Testament prophecies and themes, such as those found in Genesis, Isaiah, or Micah? Historical context and interpretive traditions. Have you considered how historical context and interpretive traditions influence different understandings of the woman in Revelation? Eschatological significance. How do interpretations of the woman tie into broader eschatological themes, such as the end times, the victory of God's people, and the defeat of evil? Unity of Revelation symbolism. How does the symbolism of the woman relate to other symbols and visions in the book of Revelation? Is there a cohesive interpretation of Revelation's imagery? These questions can deepen your understanding of the complexities surrounding the interpretation of the woman in Revelation and provide avenues for further exploration. In the KJV Book of Revelation, there is description given to the woman. What does the symbolism behind the attributes of her appearance? The symbolism behind the attributes of the woman's appearance in the Book of Revelation, particularly in Revelation 12:1, is subject to various interpretations, but several common themes emerge. Clothed with the sun, this imagery is often interpreted as representing the glory, radiance, and purity of the woman. It symbolizes her exalted status and divine favor. Some interpretations connect this imagery with the Church or with Mary, the mother of Jesus, as a symbol of her holiness and role in salvation history. Moon under her feet. The moon under the woman's feet is often interpreted as symbolizing her authority and victory over the powers of darkness and evil. It represents her triumph over the forces opposed to God and His purposes. Crown of 12 stars. The crown of 12 stars is commonly understood to symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel or the 12 apostles, representing the entirety of God's people, both Old Testament Israel and the New Testament Church. It signifies the woman's identity as a representative of God's chosen people and her role in God's redemptive plan. Overall, the woman's appearance in Revelation 12:1 is rich in symbolic imagery that conveys her exalted status, authority, and significance within the narrative of Revelation. The interpretation of these symbols may vary among different theological traditions and scholars, but they generally point to themes of divine favor, victory over evil, and the fulfillment of God's promises to His people. Does the story of the woman in the KJV book of Revelation refer to the sanctuary of a protected people? Yes, the story of the woman in the King James Version, KJV, of the book of Revelation, particularly in Revelation 12, can be interpreted as symbolizing the sanctuary and protection of God's people amidst spiritual conflict and persecution. The woman in Revelation 12 is often understood to represent various entities, such as the Church, Israel, or the faithful people of God. She is depicted as being persecuted by the dragon, commonly interpreted as Satan or the forces of evil, and fleeing into the wilderness, where God has prepared a place of safety for her. This wilderness sanctuary can be seen as a symbol of God's protection and provision for His people during times of trial and tribulation. It represents a place of refuge where the faithful can find safety and sustenance amidst the chaos and persecution of the world. How about the KJV Revelation references to those under the altar? Or the 7 churches? Or Israel? Do those relate to the seed of the woman? The references to those under the altar, the 7 churches, and Israel in the book of Revelation can be related to the concept of the seed of the woman, but they each represent distinct aspects of the broader narrative of Revelation. Here's how they can be connected. Those under the altar. In Revelation 6:9-11, John sees the souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for their testimony. These souls cry out to God, asking how long until their blood is avenged. They are given white robes and told to rest a little while longer until their fellow servants and brethren are also killed. This passage symbolizes the faithful martyrs who have suffered and died for their faith. While they may not directly represent the seed of the woman, they are part of the broader group of faithful believers who endure persecution and ultimately triumph over evil. The 7 churches. The 7 churches addressed in Revelation chapters 2 and 3 represent actual congregations in Asia Minor at the time of John's writing, as well as symbolic representations of various types of churches throughout history. While the messages to these churches primarily address their specific situations and spiritual conditions, they can also be seen as relevant to the broader body of believers. The faithful members of these churches, who overcome the challenges and remain steadfast in their faith, can be considered part of the seed of the woman, representing the faithful remnant within the church. Israel. References to Israel in Revelation can be interpreted in different ways, depending on one's theological perspective. Some see Israel in Revelation as representing ethnic Israel, while others interpret it as symbolizing the spiritual Israel, which includes both Jews and Gentiles who have faith in Jesus Christ. In either case, the faithful remnant within Israel, who turn to God and embrace Jesus as the Messiah, can be considered part of the broader seed of the woman, representing God's chosen people who remain faithful to Him. Overall, while these references in Revelation may not directly correlate with the seed of the woman in every detail, they all contribute to the overarching theme of God's faithful people enduring persecution, remaining steadfast in their faith, and ultimately triumphing over evil through the power of God. How does the woman in the KJV book of Revelation tie in with Old Testament prophecies? The woman described in the King James Version, KJV, of the book of Revelation, particularly in Revelation 12, is closely tied to Old Testament prophecies, imagery, and themes. Here are some ways in which the woman in Revelation connects with Old Testament prophecy. Symbolism of Israel. Many interpretations view the woman in Revelation 12 as symbolizing Israel, God's chosen people in the Old Testament. The imagery of the woman's crown of 12 stars and her connection to the birth of the Messiah aligns with Old Testament prophecies concerning Israel's role in God's redemptive plan, Genesis 12:1-3, Isaiah 9:6-7. Echoes of Genesis. The imagery of the woman in Revelation 12 echoes the story of Joseph's dream in Genesis 37:9-11, where Joseph dreams of the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. Some interpretations see parallels between Joseph's dream and the symbolism of the woman in Revelation, suggesting a connection between the fulfillment of God's promises to Israel and the birth of the Messiah. Imagery of spiritual warfare. The conflict between the woman and the dragon in Revelation 12 reflects themes of spiritual warfare found throughout the Old Testament, particularly in passages such as Daniel 10 and Zechariah 3. These passages depict cosmic battles between God and the forces of evil, with God ultimately triumphing over his enemies. Connection to the virgin birth. The woman in Revelation 12 is depicted as giving birth to a male child who is destined to rule all nations with a rod of iron. This imagery recalls Old Testament prophecies concerning the Messiah, such as Isaiah 7:14, which foretells the virgin birth of Emmanuel, God with us. The birth of the male child represents the fulfillment of God's promise to send a Savior to redeem his people. Overall, the woman in the book of Revelation is deeply rooted in Old Testament prophecy, imagery, and themes. She symbolizes God's covenant relationship with his people, the fulfillment of his promises, and the ultimate victory of his kingdom over the forces of evil. Understanding these connections enriches the interpretation of Revelation and highlights the continuity of God's redemptive plan throughout history.